All right. Lovely good morning to everyone. Um, so now that we're getting deeper into the world of web apps, I want to focus today on what it means to build out what we would call a RESTful app using Express. And when we're talking about REST, REST is this lovely acronym that unfortunately is one of the ones that you do have to learn. REST stands for Representational State Transfer, which is a terrible thing for an acronym to mean. And really what that means is the URL that you're going to represents the data that's going to be transferred. So, for example, if I go to /users, mysupercoolapp.com/users, what do you expect to see? It's not rutabagas. It's probably not blog posts. It starts with a U, rhymes with losers. Hi, this is the interactive portion of the day. Yay, there we go. All right. Yes, we're going to see users. If I go to something that is like users 1, 2, 3, 4, edit, what am I probably doing at that point? Editing a profile. Yeah, exactly. Similarly, if I have something like users 1, 2, 3, 4 /photos, what am I probably looking at? That user's photos. This is REST. The RESTful pattern is really all it is. It's a pattern. It's been around since 2000. It follows this particular layout. That's your RESTful pattern. So by following that pattern, we can construct the URLs for all of the actions that we would need to do in almost every case in a web application. So for example, /users, that is just our /nouns. And /users /1, 2, 3, 4 /edit, well, that's this one right here. Now, the RESTful patterns tokens here are chainable. So users /1, 2, 3, 4 /photos is actually users /1, 2, 3, 4 and /photos. So we've chained line 11 here and line 9. But what REST gives us is the context for the data. It allows us to look at that URL and as developers, as users, as a search engine, as whatever context we might be looking at that URL, we can look at it and tell what data we're going to be getting. If I had a URL that was just that, useless. Doesn't tell me anything. I don't know. Oh, that was cool. Really cool. Apparently that's a magic URL that triggers iTunes. But yeah, I can't look at that and suddenly tell what I'm going to be getting. So if I used something like, a tiny app to generate some random URL, doesn't really tell me very much. So we want URLs that match a path that we get to use. So that's why we use this pattern. And this pattern ends up going really well with what we call CRUD. And CRUD is what we do with our data in basically every single application. We create, we read, we update, we delete. And we can take CRUD and we can take it one step further and call it bread, because that more accurately reflects. Because there we're going to browse, read, edit, add, delete. So if we now decide to map these two RESTful URLs, B becomes /users. That's browsing all the users. Read is /user/ID. That's reading an individual record. E, users, ID, edit. You might also see it as update. Add is actually just /users again, except this is where HTTP verbs start to come in. So we might have /users/new, but we're then going to post to /users because that represents adding a new record. That's what post does, creates a new resource. And then, of course, we're probably just going to do /users/ID, or we might add something like the delete verb to it. But we could also just do a delete verb to /users/ID. So this gets us into an interesting space where REST is interpretive. That makes it nice and easy if there are no hard and fast rules for how you're supposed to do things, and you just get to interpret what something means, because this is going to be a get route. This is going to be a get route. But this is going to be a get route that is then probably going to either post, put, or patch to /users/ID, because that's sending data to the server. So now REST goes one level deeper, where it's not just the URL that we're dealing with, it's now the combination of HTTP verb and path. And whenever we have that combination, that's what we call a route. Verb plus path equals route. And again, for add here, this would be a get, and then we would probably post it to /users. And this one would either be a get route for that or delete to /users/ID. So now these routes start to be meaningful. And here's where it gets really cool as being meaningful, where if I'm going to build an app, if I just, I don't know, told you, hey, we're going to build a URL shortening app. Crazy, I know, work with me. And let's figure out the tasks that we're going to need to do. And even if we just started with our basic CRUD tasks, you know, the bread tasks here, I need to see the list of URLs. Okay, that's what I would need to do. I need to be able to, let's do it just from the administration. Let's not worry about sending them to the short URL yet. But I need to see an individual URL. Okay. We'll call it that. Sure. They're variables. They can be whatever we want them to be. I need to edit that one. Okay, so that edits that one, and I need to make a new URL. And I need to delete a URL. Let's just keep it nice and simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 routes that I need to write. That's a pretty good to-do list if I'm building an app. If I know that I need to build a web app, and I can plan out my routes ahead of time and understand here are the verbs and paths that I'm going to need to build my Express app to listen for, and then have callbacks that handle each one of these actions. Cool. I now have a really good to-do list. I can start planning how I'm going to tackle this project. So that's what we're going to do today. We're actually going to take an Express app and we're going to build out our bread routes for being able to do these actions in an Express app. So in order to do that, I need a noun. By the way, that's a person, place, or a thing. Usually spoken. Pumbaa. Okay. I'm going to take that one level out, and we're going to go for Africa. So, I'm going to take advantage of the express generator because it allows me to spin up an express app really quickly. And so we're going to make one for Africa. So it gives me all the files I need. Do my npm install really quick. Fix my vulnerable packages. I'll do that later. Cool. So let's look at what I've got. I've got an app.js file. I've got my node modules folder from my npm install. I've got my public. My routes have been put into their own separate file. My package.json, my views. And if we look at what's in bin, there's a script there called www, and that's the one that actually gets run to start up my Express app. So this is the way the Express team recommends that your app should be structured. But Express you can do all in one file. That's the nice part about Express. But right now, at a basic level, I can run npm start. We can see that it runs the node bin www file. And if I go to my browser and go to localhost 3000, I has Express. So, let's start off and let's see how this is put together. Now, Express comes out of the box using var because Express still has to support older versions of Node that do not support ES6. So typically one of the things I do whenever I get in here is I changed all the vars to consts so that it actually looks like the code that I would normally write. We can see here that what they've done is they've required in the routes as modules. This is a common practice you'll see a lot with Express. Instead of having everything in one big file, what they do is they put the routes in a file like this. So you require an Express, you use the router from Express, and you register all your .get, .post, etc. here, and then you export the router, and that goes back to your main app and becomes all of your routes. Turn those into consts, and I will also turn this into a fat arrow function. So what's happening when we go to the index route is it's going here, / it's rendering the index view and passing in one variable called title and setting it to Express. So I'm going to set that to Africa so that when I run npm start, it starts up and it now says, welcome to Africa. Ta-da. So that was easy. So now we want to start thinking about, it's Africa, so we're going to have animals in Africa, and that's what we're actually going to work with. So the first one that we need to worry about is browse, B. So that would be router.get /animals. And I'm going to have my callback function with rec and res. Next is one that Express gives you, but unless you're making middleware in your route, you don't need to use it. So I just need rec and res. And in order for me to display a list of animals, what do I need? If you were going to deal out a deck of cards, what would you need? A deck of cards. Yeah. So I need some animals. In fact, I'm going to call this my animals DB. And let's go ahead and put an animal in it. We had a great suggestion. Name Pumbaa, and species is going to be meerkat. So now I have animals. So in my .get/animals, I probably am going to want to follow the standard express pattern. I'm going to want to render a view and pass my animals DB into that view. So I'm going to say animals, and DB is animals DB. Looks a lot like the route from lines 9 to 11. This is where you nod and show comprehension. Okay, good. Nick's like... Okay. So if we look in our views, we have an index file there. And this is the index that is just showing Africa. Welcome to Africa. So we're going to borrow this and save it as animals.ejs. And so then here, I'm going to get passed in a list of animals as the variable DB. So I want to loop over that list and show animals. There we go. For each. For each is going to loop over, and I have a callback function where each animal is going to go in there. And so then, for each animal, I'm going to make a div, and I'm going to have, actually, no, I'm going to do this better. I'm going to use good semantic tags. And so I will have a header, and in the header I will put the animal's name. And then I'll have the article, and I will put the animal species. And these are just HTML5 tags that pretty much turn into divs. We'll talk a lot more about them next week. But what they allow me to do is they allow me to give good context to each piece of content. That's my goal with markup. So, save that file. I need to restart my server because I changed some of my JavaScript logic. Reload this, nothing changes there. But I go to /animals, and I get Puma showing up. It's not styled at all. I haven't, changed the appearance of it at all. But I can at least see my animals now to start with. So, great. I know that I can list animals. And if I do something like hypothetically add another animal, Timon. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Timon's the meerkat, all right, and this guy's the warthog. The interesting thing is that no one else corrected you. That's where I blame that I'm not done with my coffee yet. Also that I haven't watched Lion King in like 20 years. So let's npm start again. And if we have 2, ta-da, we can view 2 animals. Looks like crap, that's not the problem. The point is that if we add things into that array, we go back and load this page, we see more data. we can now browse our animals in the lovely continent of Africa. Fantastic. So now we need to be able to view one of these animals. So how do we do that? How do I get from here to one of those animals? As a normal user viewing a normal web page, what would happen? Yeah, Vanna. Exactly. So for each one of these, I'm going to, inside my article section here, so I'm going to go to /animals/ I just realized I don't have an ID for my animal. So I have a problem with my data. I have no way to uniquely identify each one of my animals. So if I don't have a way to uniquely identify, because let's face it, there could be many warthogs named Pumbaa, potentially. Could be a very popular name in the community, I don't know. So I can't rely on the name. I can't rely on the species, because it's not like there's going to be just one of each animal. So I need to go back and I need to fix my data somehow so that I have a unique ID. It's almost like putting a short URL on your URL. I'm going to go ahead and assume that I can do this. Actually, no. I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to use EJS to substitute that in. All links should always have a title on them. And I'm going to link to the word view. And now let's go and fix our data. We'll just keep adding up numbers. That's easy. So now that I've done that, restart my server. And when I refresh, I have my view link. And if I mouse over one of these, it's probably hard to see, but there's /animals/1, /animals/2. It does exactly what I want it to do. So each time I'm going to generate my view for my animal, and then it's going to have a link that links to the ID for that animal. So right now, if I click on this, womp womp, doesn't work because I don't have that route. It's not found. And 404 does not mean that my server's broken. 404 means my client requested a resource that my server can't find. And that's not a problem necessarily with my server. It means my client wanted something that doesn't exist. So in this case, I have to fix that. So we're going to come back here, router.get /animals/ID. So that's going to be for all of my animals. Rec and res again. And now I need to think about the logic that I have to solve here. So I need to be able to do this route to show an individual animal. I have the ID and the URL. So now how do I show this? How do I get data to send to res.render animal singular? Like I need something to be able to send to it. How do I get that something? If I give you a deck of cards and I tell you that I want the 3 of spades, what do? You look through the deck of cards until you find the 3 of spades. Did you guys go drinking last night? So I need to be able to find the right animal from my database. So if I have the ID, how do I do that? So yes, I can get the ID from rec.params. So I can do it that way, which works 100% of the time. But what I can also do is do some cool destructuring, if I remember how to type. And I can just do that. So that says I have an object on the right-hand side, and I know it has a key in it called ID. And I want that to be a variable by itself. So that's called destructuring. So cool, I have this ID. Now what do I do?
Sorry, can you explain that again? I make an object that has a key that I know is ID.
Yes.
Shouldn't that be location?
Nope. So what I've actually done there, and I'll hop over to a new window and do it in the REPL so that we can see it. Let's say that we have an object and we give it a couple of keys like this. So I can now do const, let's say A and B equals object. Yeah, so this is specifically called destructuring, and you can destructure arrays and objects. And what it does is it takes content from the right-hand side. In the case of an object, it looks for keys that have this exact same name, and it turns them into their own variables. So when I do this, now A is 1 and B is 2. You wouldn't have 2 A's and 2 B's in an object, because the second one would overwrite the first one. And similarly, if I have a list, I can say, whoops, I have to do it as array syntax because it's an array on the right-hand side. I can do that, and now I have those variables. So that's called destructuring, and it allows me to take data from a complex data object, like an array or an object, and turn it into just plain scalar variables. So it's a nice little trick. And it's really useful because you might have, let's imagine we had a user, and they've got, ID equals 12, name is Don, email is don@don.don, admin is true, it's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? It's a user, so we have to give them a password, and it gives me an excuse to type fluffy bunny. But I want to show that user, and all I really need is the name and the email address. So instead of having to type out const email equals user.email, const name equals user.name, I can just do const name email in one nice line, user, and then I have those values. So instead of having to pull out every key one at a time, I can do it all together in one line. It's really, really useful as a shorthand for being able to populate variables. Nick? Yeah, this is new for ES6. It's been fully supported by Node for about a year and a half now, 2 years, and fully supported in Chrome for about 8-9 months. So you can do this on the front end, but you can definitely do this on the back end. And it's now considered best practice. So now I've got my ID. I destructured it out of params. We know how that got created now. And so now I need to go to my animals database and I need to find the animal that has that ID. So the first implementation I might do is I might say, just let animal so that I have a variable. For let I equal 0, I is less than animals db.length, I plus plus. And then we're going to say if animals db I dot id is equal to id, then animal equals animals db I. So we could do that, and then interestingly the opposite of destructuring is this. So I can just make an object, and if I have a variable called animal, I can just put it in there, and that gives me the key animal and the value being the variable that I already have defined. So that's the other direction of destructuring. That's like restructuring. So theoretically, I could find my animal. Everybody comfortable with that code? Yes? Cool. All right. We'll restart our server. We're going to come back here. We're going to hit refresh. And I don't have a view. That's my next step. Cool. So let's. So this was our original animals. So I'm going to borrow part of this. So I'm passing in a variable called animal. So I'm going to put the name of the animal in the title. I'm going to put the name of the animal in the H1 here at the top. And then now what I can do is I can get rid of all this EJS logic, and I can say just a paragraph and animal.species. So that's just showing the name and the species of my animal in here. And I need to be able to go back to my index page. Make sense? Good so far? Okay. Restart our server. Refresh. Oh. Well, that's interesting. It says cannot read property name of undefined. And that's up here in the title. It's complaining about right here on line 4. When I go to put the animal.name in the title, it's telling me that animal is undefined. We can see the formatted version here. But that seems odd because we know we're setting the variable animal here, and we know we are passing it to the view right there. And this is the logic for finding it in the animals DB. Kira? Nope, template vars is just a convenience label. Yeah, that's not a required variable name. It's just totally convention. Yeah. Vanna. Nope. We don't need to redirect at this point because we haven't posted anything yet. But I will 100% tell you the reason this is not working is on the screen right now. And this is a very common Express gotcha. It's almost like I built this deliberately. It's almost like I just put my cursor on the problem. What data type is this? Is it a Boolean? It's a string. Right. What data type do you suspect this is? String. What data type do you suspect that is then? String. What's this? Right. What type of value is it? It's a number. What happens if we triple equal compare a number and a string? Returns false. We never found our animal. So that's why it remained undefined. So what we're going to do here is make sure that our ID is a number. And now, by doing that, it's going to complain again, and I'm not going to know why. And all my smugness just went away. Thank you. And then it works. When all else fails, save your files. So now I can go back, I can click on Pumbaa again, I can click on Timon, and it works. Cool. So now I've got browse, now I've got read. Let's go ahead and take a break there, and when we come back, we'll start playing with forms. All right, so a couple things I've done during the break. I added a link to the front page so that we can go from slash to seeing the animals. I spent a pair of seconds adding some style to this so it didn't look completely terrible. Now it just looks partially terrible. Yeah, that was all the changes I made. So now we're in a situation where we've got browse and read out of the way. Now we want to deal with edit and add. Let's do add first. So on this page from my slash animals page, I should be able to add a new animal. So I'm going to go into my animals route or animals view here. And animals, new. Title, add animal. And that doesn't help. So now I have a link so I can add an animal. And as before, I get an error. But I get a different error this time. On this one, I'm getting the same error I saw before when I wasn't looking up my ID the right way. In fact, this looks like, if I look at the file path here, it's actually loading my animal.ejs. But I've gone to animals/new. Now I don't have a route set up for that yet, but why is it trying to render something? Yes, Kara. Bingo. It thinks, basically it has matched this pattern here. So that doesn't help. So I need a route /animal/new. And, you get a cookie. Yes, it needs to go above, because otherwise Express is always going to match the first one that matches. So if I put new above ID, then new will always get matched first. Otherwise, no matter where else I put it in the file, unless it's above the ID route, it will always go to /animal/ID. Express does not know that ID is supposed to be a number. It just knows that the pattern is /animal/something. And that something is going to get set in the variable ID. So this is the do what I said, not do what I mean version of coding. Now, if I'm going to create a new animal, my first step as a user is I have to go to a form and fill that out. So I just need a new animal form. I don't need any data passed to it. I just need a view that's a new animal. And I know watching someone type HTML is like the greatest thing ever, so I'll try and be brief. So form method is going to be post. Action is going to be, we're going to keep the same route, if only to demonstrate what you were asking during the break. And so our animals have how many fields? 2. We don't need to worry about ID. We're going to do the logic to make a new ID. We don't need to have the user worrying about what ID to assign something. So I need a label for the name of the animal. And I need species. And then last but not least, I need a submit button. Now, a couple things I did there, which I want to take a second to explain. What does the for attribute on a label do? Anyone know? Admittedly, we haven't gotten to front-end stuff. That's next week, but if you've ever played with HTML before, you might have run into this. No? Cool. There's two main things that it does. One of them is a UI UX thing, which means when this form loads up, I can click on the label and it will automatically put the focus on the corresponding box. So the value in the for on the label matches up with the ID of the input. So that means I can click on a label and have it put the focus on the correct input box for that label, which is nice. The second and slightly more important thing that it does is what we call accessibility, which is if somebody comes to this page and is using any kind of screen reader software because they're visually impaired, this will actually tell them that the label is for the name and that let them know that it is associated with an input box. The screen reader will actually modify how it consumes this page in a way that lets them know what these form controls are for. Otherwise, they just get told there's a label here that says name. And somewhere else on the page, they'd have to scroll around, tab around to find the input box. But this way, it actually lets them know that their screen reader can activate this label to get to the right place. So really useful. It's estimated that up to like 13% of browser users on the web have some degree of visual impairment. You wouldn't willingly give up 13% of your paycheck or lunch. Don't give up 13% of your users. So little things like that I can do will automatically, as a habit, make my pages better as I'm building them. The other thing I've done is I've put a placeholder on everything because that's basically a UI UX thing that's just a hint, a reminder of what's supposed to be in there. Yes, I've put a label on it that says name, but I want them to know that this is the box for the name specifically. So now that I have my view, I'm going to refresh, and here is my very beautiful form. And so we're going to enter Simba. Simba is a lion. And when I click Add Animal, now I get a 404. That's what I expect to happen. That's good. That means I don't have any like ghost routes that are in the way. So now I need to go and I need to build that post route that goes with my get route. Okay. I like to keep them together in my file if they share the same path, just because it makes it easier to find. There's no requirement to do it unless you have to put it above or below, but this one would not conflict with the one below it because they're different verbs. So now I have a couple of things that I need to do. In fact, I've got like 4 steps here that I need to do. Step number 1 is I need to get the information that the client has submitted to me. So now that we've learned destructuring, this gets really simple. I know that my form values are in rec.body because I have the body parser. So now I can do const name species equals rec.body, and I get both of those variables straight out of that object. Nice and easy. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is I need to generate a new ID. Cool. How do I do that?
Create another function that generates random ID.
Do I want a random ID?
No, you want to see which one was the last ID and add it.
Bingo. I really like what you said. You get a cookie because you said generate a function that does this. I might need to do that in multiple places. It's good to have that as a reusable thing. So I'm going to just pretend that I'm going to have a function called generate ID, and we'll get back to making it in just a sec. Thing number 3 is I need to put this animal in my animals DB. So I'm going to say animals DB dot push ID name species. Again, this is the opposite of destructuring. This is actually structuring the data. And because I have variables called ID, name, and species, those are the keys I'm looking for. So I can just list those variables inside the curly braces and I get an object that does what I want it to do. Now we're into the last step before we write the function. The last step is the standard pattern you always follow in HTTP is that when you post something, you are then redirected to see the result of your post. When you delete something, you are then redirected to see the result of your deletion. It's not that you can't serve data in response to a post or a delete, but that's not the pattern that we typically follow. Get is what gives you data. Post and other verbs that you might use, those are for modifying things, and then you want to see the effect of that modification. So in this case, I've got two options. I can either redirect to /animals, or I can redirect to this specific animal, and basically the read page for this animal. All votes for /animals? All votes for the page for the individual animal? Okay, you win. Honestly, there is no right answer. It's potato, potato. And actually, if I'm being a good developer, I'm going to change this, and I'm going to do this as a template string, because that's the better way to do that. So that's our basic logic. Now let's generate an ID. Did I do capital ID or lowercase? Lowercase, good. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to find the max ID in our list, what the biggest one is. So there's a couple ways to do this, but we could do a for loop and we could compare the biggest one. But I'm actually going to do it slightly differently. I'm going to say animals DB map animal. I'm going to get a list of just the IDs. And then I'm going to use our good friend math.max. And so what math.max allows us to do is, as we can see here, take an array, and if we spread that array into math.max using the ES6 spread operator, we get back the list that is the largest one. And then I want to take that and add 1 to it. So, well, well, the thing is, I'm not. So, should I use let? I'm not. The thing is, this number is going back. I'm not setting this number like in a variable that is going to change. I'm taking this number and passing it back to my other function. So that it's okay. Plus, I'm not doing return max plus plus. I'm doing return max plus 1. That will actually create a new number object and return that. Yeah, Stella. So could I do animaldb.length plus 1? I could, but that's assuming that I never delete any of the earlier animals. So let's say I have 10 animals in here. You know, I add the entire cast of the movie. And I go back and I delete Timon. So now I have 9 things in my array. I go, and the last one is number 10. You know, let's say Scar was my last one that I added. He was number 10. And then I delete Timon. So now there's 9 things in my array. I go to add a new one. That one now becomes ID 10. Now we have 2 ID 10s. So I wouldn't want to do that. I can't trust that the length of the array means that all the numbers inclusively are there. Make sense? Cool. So yeah, I have to do a bit of magic here to make that happen. And by the way, yes, technically I could combine all of this into one line, but it would just be ugly, and so I'm not going to do it. But theoretically, this could be done as a one-liner. It just gets gross. So now I have generate ID. Oh, and by the way, in a case like this, when I'm trying to work out how this works, the easy thing to do is to open up a new terminal, go into the REPL, give myself a list, and I can even go ahead and make it. I can just make fake data, and let's do something really crazy, like say ID 4. So I can make myself an this array, and I can practice doing, practice getting the array of IDs out of it. Okay, cool, that works. Now I have to rewrite it because I forgot to save it in a variable. Oh, come on. There we go. So that gives me the maximum number. And then, of course, 4 plus 1 is 5. That would be my new ID. So I can work through the steps to do that in my REPL. I can practice different functions. I could, even figure out the logic first and write the for loop for it here to actually loop through that new list of IDs, find the biggest one, add one to it. Like, I can do all of that logic here, and this is the right place to do it, and then go back to my actual app and put my final code in here, rather than having to write the code, restart the app, refresh the page, find out it didn't work, go back, rewrite the code, restart the app, refresh the page. That just wastes time. Save yourself the effort and the frustration. So now that I have a good sense that this is going to work, let's actually try and create our new animal now. Aha, animal /3. And we have Simba, who's a lion. And when we go back, we get to see all of them. So now our next step, now that we have added one, is we want to be able to edit that lion or that animal. So now we're going to add a link from view, we're going to add edit. And let's actually improve this up here. Turn that into a string or a template string, so that I can then do the same thing here. /animals /animal.id /edit. So now I have an edit link, and when I mouse over it, it is animals/1/edit, animals/2, animals/3. And of course, we know we don't have a route for it, so if we click on it, we're going to get a 404. So sparing us that, router.get /animals /id /edit rec and res. And when we first go to edit something, we need a form, but this time we do need data. We do need to be able to find this individual animal and get it. So we've already solved that problem in the route right above. But if we are in this situation, hopefully this is going to pop up a red flag in the back of your head or wave a hand or something that says, oh, why would I rewrite that code? Now is the time for me to take a step back and refactor, dry out my code. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to do that. That's what I want to be able to do. That's a nice, clean way to implement this. And then all I have to do is pass the animal to my route. So let's come up here and give ourselves another function. Paste in that code. And if I'm really, really, really being disciplined, and if I'm really putting the pressure on myself, I'm going to say, you know what? This is me reinventing the wheel. This is me rewriting code that already exists in JavaScript. This is a .find. In fact, there is already a one-liner method for doing what I want to do. So let's fix that. So what I'll do is I'll comment out this code so that we can still see it for later. But that's the declarative version of what I did above. They do the exact same thing. The one on the top would be in the imperative version. That's me telling the computer how to do what I want it to do. And then line 26 is me telling the computer what I want it to do, and it just goes off and does it. And in fact, if I want to get really fancy with it, I just do that. Because that's either going to return undefined or the animal. So now that I have that, and I've implemented it in both places, slightly differently, but that's okay. Now I should be able to make my view. Now, I've already built a form, so I don't want to have to retype all that code, because again, I know how much you love to watch me type HTML. So I'm just going to save this and modify it just a bit. So here I can just add a value attribute to my form or to my inputs. And now I have it filling in automatically the name and the species from my animal. But there's one other thing from my animal that I'm going to need. What is that third hidden field that we're not displaying here? ID. You get another cookie. You're going to look like me by the end of lecture. This is where we get to take advantage of what's called a hidden input. So now this is something that our form will submit every time, and we can use to find the animal. Because again, we can't count on the fact that the names are going to be unique or that the species is going to be unique. The ID, though, is always going to be unique. So that will get submitted to me every time. And I just need to edit my button here. And if I knock on wood, then theoretically, if I click on edit, I get a huge error. Cannot read property name of undefined. At least it's going to the right place. And why is it complaining? Do. Gee, Don, it was working so well before you decided to be smart and change things. Yeah, it should actually work. Yeah. Oh, ha 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 ha. I'm so smart. Which animal did I click on? I'll give you a hint. It was number 3. I restarted my server. Much shame. Much shame. So let's... Oh, we refresh and Simba goes away. So let's follow that through. Yay for persisting. So Simba's a lion. So now if we go to edit him, there is our form. And now we can theoretically change his name. And if we click on edit animal, we would want it to post this to the right place. Except we don't have that built yet. So let's build that. Oops. Router.post, animals, ID, edit. So, const ID, name, species equals rec.body. Because all 3 of those things are being sent in by our form. For this, I have to pull this out each time because it's a new request each and every time. Yeah. Every single one of every time one of these routes happens, basically I have to rewrite that to get it from any of the posts. So now my job is to update that animal with that ID, and I then need to redirect because it's a post. I'm not going to return any data for this. I'm just going to redirect so that we can see those changes. So in order for me to update that animal with that ID, I have a slightly different job than I had before. This isn't find animal and getting it to return that animal. Because if I find animal and get it to return that animal and then change that object, it doesn't change what's in the array. So I have to find the index now. So I'm going to use my animals DB and very similar logic, except I'm going to use a different function. Instead of find, which returns the object, I'm going to use find index, which tells me the index in the array. So now that I have that index, now I can do this. And I can replace that object in the right place. I don't need, I could totally update the fields and write one line each, or I can just build a new object and replace it. But there, now I'm replacing it at the right place in the animals DB, and I'm good. And res.redirect to, let's do the same thing again, slash animals slash ID. So that'll redirect us to see that page for that animal. We'll see the changes that we have made. Save my file this time. Restart my server. And there we go. And when we go back, we have Simba the King. So now we can browse, we can read, we can edit, we can add. Have I lost anybody yet entirely? Have I lost anybody partially? Okay, cool. Last but not least, we need to be able to send the animals to the farm. We're not going to kill the animals. We're going to send them off to Uncle's farm, because that's what you do with animals when they move on. I'm trying to keep it happy, folks. So we're going to add one more link here. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you for bringing that harsh reality to us. I was trying to be nice. So the thing is here with a link is only ever going to give me a GET request. I can't generate a post with a link. And HTML forms will only allow me, at the end of the day, to use methods of GET and POST. So I don't have, right now, with the technology available to me, the ability to use the delete verb. There's definitely a way to do it, but with the technology that we're working with right now, I don't have the ability to do it. So I'm going to use a GET, because the verbs at the end of the day are suggestions. It's like the serving suggestion on a pizza box that always makes the pizza look like it's going to come out this high, and it comes out looking like, a manhole cover. So I'm just going to make a link that is going to do our delete action for us. Animals / animal.id / delete. Title equals delete animal. There's a new link for each one of our animals. Oops. I did forget to close it. My fault. Unterminated template literal. Wow. There we go. And now all of our animals have a delete link. So now that we have that, let's add our last one here. Animals ID delete. Rec and res. So now we have two jobs to do. We need to get rid of that animal in our animals DB, and we need to redirect, because we don't have any content to show because we're literally deleting the animal. So if I have an array with elements in it, how do I remove an element from that array? Yes. Dot splice is going to be better here because I don't have anything to replace it with, and I don't want to just put nulls in, because that would then break all of my comparisons like animal.id. That would then throw an error because null would not have an ID property. So yeah, dot splice. So what I want to do is borrow this line right here, which I now probably could turn into its own function, but it's a one-liner, so Animals db.splice index 1. I want to take out one element at that index. And res.redirect animals, because I don't have a specific animal to send it to. Okay. Restart the server. Refresh. So let's walk through. We will add Simba. He's a lion. Congratulations. We will edit him. And now, oh, that was cool. Oh, that was a bug. I forgot to talk about that one. So let's delete that. ID is not defined. Yeah, I got fancy. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to replicate that bug because I forgot I had left that one in there on purpose. So we're going to add an animal. Simba, lion. We're going to edit Simba. And that duplicated him. So now let's try deleting him. Okay, that worked. But we're still in this situation where if we edit Simba, it adds a new animal.
Can you just review how you deleted the next try?
Yes. How did I delete? So, I find the index from the animals DB by comparing the ID of each animal with rec.params.id, cast to a number. That returns the index of the array, and then I splice out that index and one element from the array. Yeah. Sure. So delete only works on objects. So delete is how you delete a key from an object. And at the point where you have short URL as a key and then another object as your value that is, short URL and user and long URL and all the other stuff that you're going to have in there, that makes perfect sense. So it makes a lot of sense if your data storage is an object. I haven't done that. I've done an array. So I have to do it differently. Nick? Yes, SQL's better than everything. But we don't have SQL yet. That's week 4. So to answer your question with the answer you're actually looking for, it depends on how you're storing your data. And so the rule here is always, and this is something you can tattoo on the inside of your eyelids because it will apply for the rest of your dev career, store your data the way that you're going to query your data. So in this case, because I'm doing all of my lookups by the ID, it could be either an object or an array. They're kind of equally easy to use. If I have a unique code like the short URL, then it makes more sense to do an object. In that case, because for example, if I used objects here and used keys as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. as the keys, I'd have to do one extra step to be able to get that list of keys, find the max one, and add one to it. So it's not so much that it would complicate things, it just adds another step that I would have to do. Yeah, always just store your data the way you're going to query your data, and ideally you should be storing your data in the easiest format to be able to query the data you need from it. So arrays and objects are kind of equidistant in this case, but in the case of TinyApp, it makes more sense to use objects. To use one big object than with other metadata inside of it. Did that answer your question, Benna, about how to delete it?
Yes.
Cool. So let's figure out that last bug. So when I go to edit and I post that in, here's our edit. Can we see any bug here between line 60 and 65 that would cause it to add a new animal? This is where you have to think 10% more like a computer and 10% less like a human. Dana?
You're using an equal sign, so that means that if that ID doesn't exist, then add it.
Potentially, but at that point, index returns undefined. So yeah, if I did return an undefined, so what I might want to do here is say if index, do these two things, else res.redirect animals ID edit. So we'll just send you back to the edit page if you didn't submit the correct thing, like if the ID wasn't right. So let's test that. That's better code anyway. So we're going to edit Pumbaa, and we'll edit. That is Pumbaa testing. We'll go back. We still got a new animal added, so that didn't fix the problem. Well, we're not using .push. We're using that index that we looked up from our animals DB, and we're adding an object to it. Yep. You keep having an idea, Nick.
I just like to further test it, like add another animal and then edit another animal and see if it's like the first spot or the last spot.
Okay, so we now have /animals/4. So yeah, it is going into the last spot every time.
No, I meant like now edit something.
Okay.
Not the last one, yeah.
Okay, let's edit Timon. Testing again. /animals/5. And it's going into the last spot. Yep. And I'm going to helpfully tell you this time that the bug is not on the screen. We are not generating a new ID each time we are calling this, because find index is either going to return an index from the existing array or undefined. Aha. This is edit animal. The error is now on the screen. Yep. 100%. So this is a deliberate thing I did to highlight the dangers of copying and pasting code. I deliberately did not reset the action on the form when I was going through and editing this so that we would have this behavior. And this is something that would probably cause you to chase this bug for hours and like ruin the confidence of at least one or two mentors in the process. Yeah, I copied and pasted this form from the new animal, and because I just copied and pasted, if I miss one field, I now have a bug. So the whole thing now needs to be animal.id/edit. Now it's going to be posting to the right place. And because all I've done is update a view, now I can just go to here. And it complains completely. Oh, did I? I wonder if I restarted. Oh, no. But it worked. Now it's just complaining about, oh, the reason it's complaining. No, I don't know why it's complaining. Cool. Let me figure that out. So line 4, animal.name. Cannot read property name of undefined. Well, that's interesting. So,
Oh, I think it's because you're editing an animal that you added, but it doesn't like save it in the.
well, that was why I deliberately went back and reloaded this page. So I haven't restarted my server yet. I didn't change any logic in the routes file. I just changed the view. So theoretically, this is just for the get route at this point for the form. Okay, so that one's working. That one's working. But if I change one of these, then it does that. So that's a genuine bug. So so it posts to edit, and we are redirecting. No. So if I go here, oh wait, I have an idea. Right, because I killed the server. Okay, so if I edit him, before I do this, I'm going to inspect. So this is animal/1/edit. So it is saying that it's going to the right place. But it sends me back there. It has sent me back to edit, which was the logic I just put in, because it didn't find the index I wanted. So so when I went to post that update, it did not find. Aha. Because I'm using this ID from the rec.body. And I have the hidden input that has name equals ID. So let's actually make sure that that's in there. ID, value equals 1. There's the name. There's species. Okay. Oh, cool. Apparently, I really suck at writing forms. I got so wrapped up in talking about labels, I forgot to actually write them properly. But that shouldn't be, that's not the problem. But I have made my form better now. Okay. So I'm submitting my ID here. Let's start off by making sure that it's actually coming in on the back end. So that when we post, let's just log out rec.body. So I'm going to edit, and it's going to send me back to here. So we have an ID, we have the name, we have the species. So it's doing exactly what we wanted it to do, and the redirect is happening there. There's the status code from the res.redirect. Okay, so we know we're getting the data. Let's see what index we get back. We get redirected back there. We get index 0. That's what we wanted because that's the first one in the animals DB. So theoretically, we should be able to do what we want to do, right? Anybody else see the problem? We actually have a cascade of interesting things happening here. This is asking if 0. What does 0 evaluate to in JavaScript? False. We have to ask that question instead. So now we have solved that problem. Now we have to solve this problem. This is a different problem. So now we're looking at animals /1. So we're looking at the view page, like to actually see the animal. And it's telling us that it can't find the animal. So that's way back up here. That is this one. Nope, this one. There we go. So this is our find animal. So find animal now isn't. Yeah. So if we look at our function for finding the animal, that's using the .find and comparing with the number of the ID that's getting passed in. So let's do a couple things here. Let's look at those two values because those are the important ones. And all of a sudden it worked because we restarted. So let's edit him and then find out what happens. It's now turned into a string, and that keeps it from working the way we wanted it to work before. So I didn't intend for this bug. This one was kind of cool. So let's fix this. Easiest way to do this is that. We're still restructuring using name and species, but we're actually manually setting key and value for ID. We can mix and match that syntax, and it's totally fine. Because the problem was ID was coming in as a string from rec.body. So we've restarted. Now Pumbaa works. Let's edit him. Ta-da. And no new duplication. So just to walk through, this is our browse. This is our read. This is our edit. This is our add. And this is our delete. Now we have our full bread app, CRUD app, set up to be able to celebrate the animals from Africa. Any questions on how we got to this point? We got to do some fun debugging along the way. Cool? Clear as mud?
So what's the equal sign that doesn't evaluate the type option?
Double equals.
So why don't we do that?
Two reasons. Why don't we use double equals? The type coercion can often have some unintended results. For example, if I were doing double equals and the one on the left was a string, if the one on the left was a string, if the one on the left is a number and the one on the right is a string, then the one on the right is going to get cast to a number, which is then going to turn it into nan, unless the first character of that string is a number. So if, let's say I have, two double equals, 2 dogs. That returns false. But what it's actually, the weird thing that's happening here is it's going to try and cast that to a number, which gives me nan, which isn't actually the data I want to compare. So there's some unintended results there. The other thing I have to watch out for is if in my application any of the libraries I've installed have done something to change the behavior of the either number casting or like .toString or something like that, then I could get really unpredictable results. The other thing is this technically encourages me to be lazy in my coding. Even though, yes, it works, it encourages me to be lazy and compare numbers against strings and strings against numbers, which technically shouldn't be allowed to be compared. The only time it's going to be okay for me to do this is, let's say I have something like this list, and I want to say list index of 6 double equals -1. I'm in control of both sides of that data, and that's going to return true. If I'm 100% in control of the data on both sides, and I know what types they're going to be returning, then I can kind of more safely get away with double equals. But especially in a web app where there's any possibility that I'm comparing data that's coming from the user or from the client, I always want to be more strict with that. Unfortunately, although it sounds cynical, as a web dev, I have to assume that all data that comes from the client is either malicious or wrong, and often both. So double equals allows me to be safe in what I'm comparing and not allow things to slip through. Does that answer your question? Cool. And not because I'm whoring for followers, but I actually just posted, I think it's this morning, is either yesterday or today, a cool blog post about how the actual double equals conversion works in JavaScript on Twitter. So if you just look me up on Twitter, it's either this morning or yesterday. It actually is a little wizard, so you can put in different values, and it will show you which rules get applied for comparison and what happens to the other value. So it's kind of cool to be able to see that happen. I just came across that blog post recently. So feel free to check that out and then follow me. Cool. So I will package this up in a repo and send it out to you guys. If you're going to go back and look at this code and study it, the one thing I want to encourage you more than anything else, follow the path of execution. Don't just like start at the top of the routes file and read top to bottom, left to right. That's not going to show you how the code works. Start at like, okay, I'm in the client, I'm clicking on this route, therefore it is a get route with this path. And then go find that in the routes file and just look at that one function and trace it through. Because if you try and just open up the routes file and read it top to bottom like a John Grisham novel, you're not going to actually see how everything fits together. So always whenever you are looking at a new piece of code, like a new app, follow the path of execution. Cool? Yeah, Nick. Yeah. What were you looking for?
I noticed that in not the index, the file where all the notes are,
Uh-huh.
there's module
router.
Yeah. Is that linked to another file? Like access to it?
It's this. Yes. But module.exports router equals router is actually exporting this variable. And that's what I'm adding all of my routes to. Instead of app.post, app.get, I'm doing router.post and router.get. So I'm registering all of those routes in the Express router and exporting that back to my main app. Because this isn't the app.js file. In my app.js file, I bring all of those in here, and then, where is it? Here, app.use/index. Yeah, because we didn't need that. All the work was being done somewhere else. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, folks.